in this video, which is part 7, right? Let's take a look at what it would take to rig our character by simply creating a some sort of joins or a skeleton for our guy. So in our previous video, we animated each section, including the main group. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually select, the way I'm doing that is I'm holding down the Shift key and just selecting the entire timeline, which is just really just 3 keyframes. And I'm going to right click and say delete. And that gets rid of any animation that was placed on our group. And now I can also select, click on one of the pieces, right? And hold on the Shift key and select the rest of them. And also at the same time hold the Shift key and drag it from 0 all the way to 60, and then just do delete. So that should technically, if we double check, delete any animations that we've done in our previous video. So now if I press play, he's perfectly still, right? All right, so to create joins, what I usually do is I go to my layer and I'm going to go ahead and delete the current layer, and I'm going to create a new one. And this this new layer, what I'm going to do is I'm going to call it, let's call it mesh, or you can call it whatever you want. I'm going to call mine mesh and say save. And now what I would like to do is I would like to set it as a template. So I can see where the topology is, but I certainly can't select it, nor do I need to see it. I just need to kind of give me a rough idea of where the geometry is. And from this point on, let's go ahead and press spacebar to go into our quad view. And let's switch this from modeling to rigging. And what I'm going to do is go to skeleton, and let's take a look at our options here. And I believe mine are all, let me just double check, but I'm going to reset these. All this is by default, so I haven't customized this in any way, right? So now while my joins button is selected, I'm going to go ahead and drag the first one. Let's go ahead and start from the center. So from the front. So I'm gonna go into my front view, and my very first joint is going to be from the center where his light is, right where his chest is. And I'm just gonna make one to his neck, right there. And you can see what that looks like. And if you are not happy with the size of the joints, we can adjust that in a second. So I'm going to click it once on my neck, and then another one I'm going to click in the middle of his head. And let's go ahead and talk about this for a minute. So right now I just created 2 links, right? 2 joins. And again, I'm not really sure why it's so small. I believe it's probably, again, because of my settings and centimeter mode. But if you go to Windows, or display, animation, join size, at any point we can adjust this. So we can actually control the size of this based on what our units are. So in my case specifically, just so you guys can see better, I'm going to really pump this up to like 3.6, because I want to make sure that these are well visible, right? And if we press spacebar, we can see that these are actually not aligned with the middle. So I'm not actually going to align it with this middle line of my grid a little better, just like that. Okay, so now let's take a look from the side view. from the side view, I would like this joint here to be my the driver for the head. So I want this guy to be right in the center of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to really zoom in a lot and put this guy right in the center, right here. So the head and the neck geometry, all of this will be linked to this now green joint, right? So we'll link that, and let's talk about the rest of this. So the other one that, and you know, one interesting thing too that I like to do when you do this kind of a custom skeleton, you can customize it a little bit. For example, you can click on this link, and because this is sort of going to be the main center link, kind of his, I guess, his pelvis in some strange way, it would be cool to make this circle right here a little larger to indicate that that's like the main one. So what we could do is we could go to our attribute editor, and in the radius right now it's set to, mine is at 1.8. I can go to something much larger like 4, and that makes it, you know, a lot bigger. And it's not necessary, but I like to do that just so I could visually see that that's the main one, and everything is going to kind of branch out of it. Okay, so the next one that I would like to create is for the weapons. And for the weapons, I'm going to grab my joints again, and I'm going to click right here where his shoulder is. I'm going to make another one right there where it meets the round weapon, and I'm going to go also in the center. So think of it as the wrist, this is the elbow, and this is sort of the shoulder. So now we could select these and position them a little better if we needed to. But so it makes sense from the front, right? Let's go ahead and press space bar and go to the top view and make sure it looks good here, which it does. I want to make sure that it's in alignment with this guy. Okay, so now we can jump even into our perspective view and take a look. So that's looking pretty cool. Before I connect this joint to this one, to the main one, I would like to mirror it to the other side. But before I mirror it to the other side, I actually realized that in addition to having the arm, you know what would be really cool too is if we created a joint going all the way to the front of the weapon. And the reason for that is because I'm thinking when he is firing, it would be cool to create an animation of the weapon. And I'm just making this up as I'm looking at this, so this is not planned. Again, just having fun. But when the weapon fires, it would be cool if like the first half of the weapon kind of expanded, you know, in and out to show us that there is some sort of a momentum or power coming from the blaster. And to achieve that, it would be cool if we could create a couple of joints, and then one of them, the end one, we could actually animate and sort of create this pulsation. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my top view, grab my joints, and this time I'm going to go, let's go from, so we're going to connect it to here. So let's go from like here, yeah, like right here, all the way to the end. I think that would be really cool. So essentially what we could do later is grab this point here, and by animating this, all of these points would kind of go with it, and you'll see what I mean later on. But now I need to make sure that it's in alignment with this, with the elbow. I'm going to press space bar and go to my front view and just bring this all the way up, and just make sure that it sort of is aligned with the other one. So something like that. Let's go to the top view, and you can see how it looks the same from this view, but in this view we can clearly see that it's no longer on the floor, right? Obviously. All right, so now what we need to do is select the child and then the parent and then press P, and you can see that that creates a nice flow, right? So it goes from the shoulder to the elbow, I guess this is the elbow, to the wrist, right? And if you select this joint here, it's going to select the whole branch, and that's what we want. All right, so that's looking really nice. Let's go into our perspective view, check it out. Looks great. I'm going to click on my left arm, go to skeleton, and I'm looking for mirror joints. So let's check this out. I'm going to mirror it on YZ, right? And I'm looking here, YZ is the middle. So we want to flip it on the other side. So that's fine, say mirror. And Maya beautifully aligns the right arm with the left arm. So now we have two. All right, so now if I hold on the shift key, I can, this one is still selected, so I'm going to select this one. And then again, children to parents. So I'm going to select both of these, then hold down the shift key and select the parent, the one that I want to link to, and press P on my keyboard. And that connects the entire hierarchy into sort of the top skeleton. So now the whole idea is if I click on this one, everything needs to be selected, right? Because this is our main joint. So if I click on it, sure enough, they'll follow. And then obviously if you want to move, the elbow, it doesn't affect anything else, which is great. And then if you want to move, the weapon, it wouldn't affect anything else. So that's a good way to check and make sure that the flow of your joints makes sense, right? Just common sense. So the only other thing that I need to work on is linking the wheel. So for the wheel, I'm going to go into my, let's go into our side view, and let's click on the joints again. And what I'm going to do is just create a joint right in the center of the wheel. And I don't see a reason why this should be so tiny. So I'm actually going to go to my attribute editor, and in my radius, let's just make it ginormous. Just kind of indicate that this is the wheel. And I'm fine with it being this large, right? I'm going to go in my perspective view. So I mean, we're literally creating like a custom skeleton just for this character, which is really fun. What I'm going to do is select my child, select the parent, and then press P. Okay. And now again, if I select the center, you can see that the entire thing is being selected. So like, if you needed to jump, great. And then if we needed to animate the wheel, then we have full control of the wheel, and that, there you go. And that doesn't affect anything else. So that's pretty much it. That's how easy it is to create a custom skeleton. The rest is now binding it to the mesh. So let's go ahead and do that next. And then of course, one very important thing is to name your joints. So maybe we want to quickly just at least name the big ones, right? So this is going to be head. This is going to be right arm. Then we got left arm, and of course the wheel. And if we wanted to do just a little more, let's go ahead and say this is left elbow, and maybe this is a left wrist. And maybe this is, I don't know, I'm running out of ideas. Maybe this is a left hand. I don't know. Hand makes sense, I guess. And I usually don't name the end ones, but you should. You should do L end, so you know it's the end joint. And the reason you want to name your joints is, again, if you pass this to anybody else, any other developer or coder, they need to know what the joints are in order in the game engine to make them move, right? Common sense. So if you have a bunch of numbers and unnamed joins, it becomes very difficult a lot of times to figure out what's what. So it takes, uh, it's a good practice to quickly take a minute or two and just name your stuff. So I'm going to call this R end, R hand, R wrist. I know hand and wrist is the same, but what are you going to do? And then there's going to be R elbow. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. I'm actually going to go ahead and do Control S. And a lot of times, just my own personal thing, I look up here and you can see that there's a little asterisk here. That means the scene as you currently are in it is not saved. So if I do Control S, you can see that little thing is going to disappear. If it doesn't, that means something is selected. So like if I don't select anything and do Control S, you can see now it's gone, right? So I know, okay, great, my scene is saved. Another really important thing and trick is whenever you achieve a large milestone, like we just set up the hierarchy, the skeleton for our character, and before jumping into binding it, maybe it would be good to create another version of this so we could always go back if something goes wrong. So that's really important, especially as the characters become more and more complex. You really want to make sure that you don't only work in one scene just in case. You know what I'm saying? So like if Maya crashes and damages your scene, sometimes it's corrupt and you can't open it. So that's a really scary thing. So let's create another version of this. And it's very simple to do. So you just make a change of any kind, make sure your asterisk is back up there. And now if I want to create another version of this, there's a trick. You hold down Control, Alt, and S. And when you do that, you see what's happening? And it added 001 to the end of it. So now in my project folder, I know that there's the first one, which is going to be just our skeleton, and now the second one is where we can do the binding. And then every time you make a progress, go ahead and do Control Alt S, and it's going to sequentially save your work. So you can always go, if you needed to, pull up your other files. All right, so let's go into our layers, and I'm now going to get out of the template and reference mode. Now my my joints are in the scene, so I need to see them. So I'm going to click on this button here, X-ray joins, right? So you could see the joins through the mesh. And now what I need to do, I need to select all the elements, all the pieces, and I'm going to do that next. So make sure that all of these are selected, and I'm going to hold down Shift key and select the center of my main joint here. So you can see that everything has been selected. So we got the skeleton and all the pieces. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Skin, Bind Skin, and let's go ahead and open the preferences. And I can reset these. And I have to be honest with you, a lot of times I'll play with a couple different options and see which one works. So before you press any of these buttons again, do Control S, just so we can go back if we needed to. And let's start from the top. So the bind to, I'm going to leave it alone, just like joint hierarchy, that's fine. For the bind method, if I have a character with a human IK, I always use geodesic voxel. But for this, I'm going to leave it by default as the closest distance, and see how that works. Classic linear is fine. And I'm actually literally just going to leave it as the default. So I didn't do anything. And max influence 5 is fine because we can manually paint the weights in a minute. So I'm just going to say apply and close. All right, as soon as I did that, you can see that the skeleton is now in this interesting kind of a colorful pattern. Before it was just all green or blue. Now it has some colors in it, and that is showing you that it's being linked to the mesh, right? So now if I grab something and attempt to rotate it, it's terrible, but you can see that it worked, right? It's linked to, we can adjust we can adjust the weights and adjust what mesh is being controlled by this joint, but it did work. So now if we grab the head, let's grab the head joint, right, and try to move it. We can see that that worked as well. And let's just do one more. Let's grab the wheel and attempt to rotate it. It's trying, right? Okay, so now the fun part is to actually assign different points to different joints. And it's actually really easy to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this wheel, and what I need to do is go to select, convert selection to vertices. And the reason for that is because when you are doing weights, you want to make sure that you're working with vertices. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of the vertices for the wheel, and I'm going to assign them all to the wheel of this big round joint wheel, right? So let's do that. So let's go to skin, paint skin weights, and let's look at our options here. I'm going to close my outliner, and right away you can see that if I click on the wheel, I can see that the wheel joint is controlling all of these points as of right now, and I need to make sure that they are all 100% white, because that indicates that every single joint is fully painted or assigned to the wheel joint. So as of right now, you can see some of it is kind of gray, some of it is up there as black. So check this out. If I just go to make sure that my mode is in paint mode, and go to paint operation as replace, and what I want to do is crank the opacity all the way up and the value all the way up as well, so both of these are 100%. And then I'm just going to flood it, which flood means like literally, like in Photoshop you have the paint bucket and you just turn everything in one color. So when you flood something and it's selected, it's just going to give all of these values to each single point. So I'm flooding it with 100% weights and 100% opacity. So check this out. As soon as I press flood, you can see that now it's all 100%, right? So now if we right click and go to object mode and actually click on our wheel one more time, go to our rotation tool and attempt to rotate it, you can see how it's beautifully moving every single point. Now I see that it's also connected to the side there, right? The side of the thing is moving too. So we don't want that, obviously, but we can fix that next. So the wheel is done. All right, so let's check out this situation here. So this time I'm gonna click on my body and do the same thing. I'm gonna go to select, convert selection, verts, so everything is in Vert mode, I'm going to go to my paint. And what I would like to do now is I would like to assign everything, the entire body should be assigned to this joint there, to the center one. So if I right click, and you have to find the right spot. If you right click and it says select influence, I can select that round joint, right? Sometimes you have to move your mouse just a little bit to make sure that the actual word select influence comes up. So many times I have to zoom in, and if I select this round chest plate, chest joint, I can see that select influence is there. And once it's selected, right, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to flood every single point to this joint. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to flood it. Boom. So this time, again, as you're doing it, it's really good practice to keep checking your work. So let's right click, go to object mode, and if I select the wheel, go to rotation, and watch the side here. It shouldn't move because now all the points are assigned to the chest. So if I move the wheel, you see that nothing is being affected, which is great. So piece by piece we can adjust, and because he's a robot, he doesn't really have any, you know, all the pieces are sort of modular and separate, so it's kind of easy to do skin weights, and it's a great character to learn on. All right, so let's talk about the head next, maybe. So I'm gonna grab this guy and do exactly the same thing. I'm going to go to select, verts, paint. This time I'm going to right click over this guy and say select influence, and I'm going to flood that. Okay. And technically that means if I grab this and rotate it, it's perfect in every way except it's moving the shoulders, right? Because we didn't assign the shoulders to anything yet. So that's great. And you know, you can even go as far as moving it this way. Maybe it doesn't look that great because we didn't really model for that, but that's possible, right? It's essentially, it's almost like a puppet, right? So these are the puppet strings. You can decide. And here's the cool part. Now you can, because it's assigned to different joints, we can animate different pieces. So like you can put this up, you know, you can rotate it, and which is really cool. It gives you a lot of control over your character. Oh, and this is the part I was telling you about. We'll get to the guns in a minute, but I get excited. So this is the part I was telling you about. Now, if you grab these front ones, you can go boom, 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 boom. I don't know why it's doing that, but you can have a little animation going this way, and you can even grab this too. Essentially, I guess this is what I was going for. So when he shoots, he goes boom, boom. Let's see. So next, we need to let's take a look at the shoulders, which is also the weapons, right? And the weapons are going to be really a little bit more interesting, so a little more advanced. So right now, if I grab this and I try to pivot it, I don't really want the shoulder to be affected in any way. So I know that it's one big piece, but if you really logically think about it, I want the shoulder to be assigned to the chest, right? And then the arm would be all of this. So let's do that. So I'm going to actually go into face mode, double click on my shoulder, hold down shift, double click on my shoulder, and now go to select, verts, paint, right click, go to select influence over my middle chest here, pelvis, and flood it. So now the shoulders are flooded to the, I call it pelvis, but you know what I mean, that's the center of the robot, right? So let's get out and double check. Now if I move this, it should not affect the shoulders, right? Which is great. That's exactly what I wanted. Perfect. All right, so let's see. So next, let's talk about what happens here. When we grab this elbow, and maybe we want to, let's switch to world view. Let's say we want maybe to animate this a little bit. I think this works. I actually don't have a problem with that because I'm not going to be moving it too much, so I'm not going to break the elbow like that. And if I needed to look up, I could do this, which totally works. I know there's a little bit of stretching going on, but I'm totally fine with that. So I'm not even sure I'm going to touch any of that. Let's see. If I move this like I wanted to, I'm okay with that too, because I can actually just grab this and animate this piece, because this is essentially all I wanted. So I have a way to control for him to look up. That's all I wanted, or down, right? And my only other thing was this. I actually don't have any other things that I'm thinking about as far as the weapons go. Okay, so now since we did the rigging, I believe that concludes the rigging. Let's go ahead and create, again, a really simple animation, just like we did before. So I'm still in 60 frames per second. And let's go back to our outliner. And I'm actually going to close my joins. And no, I need to see them. Never mind. Let's leave those open. So let's go to frame 1. Let's click on our main one and press S. Go to 60 and press S. And now in the middle, let's create some maybe movement at 30. Just like we did before, I'm going to press S. And I'm going to move this up a little bit. So now if I press play, he should be just bopping up and down like he's driving. All right, so that's cool. Next, let's go and, to be honest with you, I don't really know what happened to his face. Where's the texture for the eyes? So if I press Control S and reload my scene, I'm not sure what it's doing, but the eyes are back. Okay, well, so let's go back to our animation. So we got him bopping up and down. Next, let's do the wheel. So the wheel, I'm gonna, oh, by the way, as you're doing the animation, you no longer need to worry about the mesh. So a lot of times I check this button to uncheck it to make sure the mesh button, so you can no longer select the mesh. That's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is going to the layer, and instead of, we have this guy linked, right? The mesh. So we can set it, instead of template, we can just say a reference. So essentially it's exactly the same thing, but now you can select it, right? So there's two ways of controlling your mesh, not being able to select it. All right, so I'm gonna grab my wheel, press S, go to 60, press S, go to 30, and no, I'm sorry, I'm gonna go to 60, and I'm actually gonna spin this guy 180, just like we did in our previous video. So now if I go to 1 and 60 and press play, okay, and remember it's doing the ease in and out. So just like in our previous video, let's select it, go to Windows, Animation Graph Editor, let's grab our rotation which is rotate X. So I want rotate X, which is this. And what I need to do is make it linear. All right, so now if I press play, he's spinning. That looks really cool. Let's do the bopping of the head like we did before. I'm gonna go to press S, and on 30, and let's go ahead and maybe pull it down. All right, with the guns, let's go ahead and select both of these and select keyframes for each, and then on 30, I'm going to switch this to object and maybe pull them up. Come on, how cool is that? That's really cool. I'm having so much fun. I love this. So you can see that there's incredible amount of control with the joints, and that's what I wanted to show you guys. And again, this is how you want to control the character in the game, because then you can code all the joints and add scripting to it, and then you can do fun things. Again, you can move the head up and down. You know, in addition to maybe bopping it, we can actually, if we wanted to, just move it up. Why not? Just to make it even more interesting. So now if I press play, you're gonna have, you know, you can go crazy with this and just have fun. And all these little subtle movements, if they're working together, they create really fun, playful animations. And so essentially, if this was a game character, you would want to create sequences or different segments, right? So like 0 to 60 would be him driving. And then what you want to do is go to, like, you know, maybe change this to 100. And now from 60 to 100, which is, maybe go ahead and move this to 60. Okay, so from 60 to 100 is going to be him shooting, and so on. So essentially, you can go through the timeline and set up as many animations as you want, and the only thing you need to do is write down the number of the segments. So 0 to 60 is driving, 60 to 100 is shooting, 100 to 150 dying, or, you know, how fun would it be to break him into little pieces and in the game have him explode, or you get the idea. So then when you bring him into Unity as one FBX file, in Unity, you just specify the segments, and the game engine kind of controls it that way. So we can take a look at that as well. But just for fun, let's do a quick shooting one. So I'm gonna go to 100 and press S. Always set a keyframe at the end before doing animations. Otherwise, you know, there's infinity, like there's no reference point of the motion. So you always want to set the end one, if you can, before doing other stuff, especially in the loop, right? Because I want 60 and 100 to be the same, so it's looping. And maybe, you know, about halfway here, maybe he shoots. So now we can grab these guys. Oh, by the way, this is important. If I go to 60, I need to make sure that I have the keyframes selected for every single joint, right? Because you want to make sure that they're rooted. And because if you start moving it, especially with this button on, and you don't have them set as keyframes, you're going to have a lot of problems. So one way to do it is you right click and you say select hierarchy, and when you do that, the skeleton turns white with some green in it, but this is showing you that every single joint has been selected. And now if you press S on 60 and 100, every single joint, even the end ones, have been set keyframes. So now check this out. If I select this one, you see 60 and 100 are set. It doesn't really matter what I select. I can select the top of the head. It's set. So that's a really important trick. So now if we go about halfway and we grab these guys, maybe we can move him up like he's shooting. And, you know, at any point you can hold down the shift click and you can put it in different place. So maybe at first the shot happens really fast and then he kind of, you know, you can play with the timing of the animation. So let's take a look. So he's shooting. One of the other things, maybe let's grab his main frame here, and as he shoots, maybe he also goes back a little. You get the idea. Now you're getting into animation and you know, different things. So we can actually move them up a little, move him up a little more dramatic. If you wanted to put him back in place faster, we could copy this keyframe and go to somewhere here, paste it. So you get the idea. I just want to show you kind of the basics. All right, so listen, I hope you had fun during this tutorial and the 8-part series. I hope you watched all of them, because in each video I kind of gave different tips and tricks, even though maybe sometimes it has nothing to do with what we're doing, but it's a flow, right? It's a process, and the best way to get better is just to keep practicing and making cool stuff. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in our next video.